So good evening and welcome to the May 1st, 2024 meeting of the New London Board of Selectmen. First item on our agenda this evening is to introduce you to Sam Clark. Sam, would you like to come up, please? While Sam is getting himself situated, the Selectmen have offered Sam the job of the third in the history of DPW leadership for the town of New London, and he's going to be starting work in early August after Bob Harrington sails off into the sunset. And I just thought, Sam, if you just give people a little bit of background about what you're doing now, and that would be great.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Sam Clark. I work over at the wastewater department now, for about 9 years. I really look forward to moving up to public works director and serving you guys, the community, and working with the selectmen to better the town of London. So this is going to be great. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, so we're particularly pleased that Sam has this wastewater background. It's a piece of the job that most people don't realize has to be covered, and with his experience in wastewater work, it's going to really be helpful for us as we continue to work with the town of Sunapee on our sewer system. So that's great background too, Sam. And you want to just, your wife is here, so you want to just say hello?
Yeah, my wife Kelsey Clark is sitting over there in the second row back, supporting me, making my face red and embarrassing me.
So we hope that you will work hard with wastewater for the next couple of months, learn everything that Bob has to teach you between now and the end of July, and we look forward to having you on board in August.
Yeah, Bob's a phenomenal boss and teaching me a lot already, so it's been great. And look forward to training everybody up over at wastewater so we can have a good transition there and keep moving forward. So
great. Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Yeah. Okay, second on our agenda this evening is asked Adam Ricker to briefly come and talk to us about an aspect of his job that most of us forget about. But Article 29 of the zoning ordinance does call for the selectmen to enforce provisions of the New London zoning ordinance, or to delegate that to somebody else, like the zoning administrator. And so I've asked Adam tonight just to tell us a little bit about what he does as the enforcer of compliance with the zoning ordinance. Adam, why don't you come sit up here so you can be seen on the video in the future. Nice try though. And I'm going to be purposely asking Adam not to go on too long, because I know he has a housing commission meeting he's got to go chair or help chair in a very short period of time. So take it away, Adam.
And of course, you're also all invited.
Right, it's the next meeting after this one. It's going to be over in Whipple Hall, and there'll be a good follow-up to this meeting.
So enforcement, this is probably everyone's least favorite task, I would say, because it usually means that we're meeting community members under a scenario that's not as fun as subdividing, or building a new house, or putting in a pool, or something that is a positive. And so when we have something to enforce, typically it comes to us in one of three ways. Either we notice something personally. I think Kim and I are always on the lookout for something that needs to be addressed. Other staff members in town, particularly the assessors. And so I would say that they're sort of in their own category. And this time of year, they're really effective at helping with this, because they are doing what they call pickups. They're going out to all of the properties who have applied for some sort of a permit in the last year to make sure that the tax assessment is correct as of April 1st. And so oftentimes they get invited to places that we don't have general ability to view, and they let us know when things don't look like what the permit's really depicted, or when they just see something that seems right. And sometimes it's not worthy of something to follow up on. There's really a paper trail. It just wasn't documented in the right way or something, but it usually does generate a fair for us following up on next. So I would say so far this year has been particularly good. So we appreciate everyone being really thorough with the third is when we get a community complaints from either a butter or resident or business owner. They say, you know, I saw this at somebody's house or I saw this at somebody's business. I didn't think we could do that. Or, you know, I went to a meeting and I saw this approval. That's not how I remember it. And so we get some sort of initial feedback. I will say sometimes they're anonymous and those are particularly difficult because we don't have anybody to ask any questions to. There's not usually a whole lot of information that comes in with them. And so in those scenarios, you know, we do the best we can to follow up on them. I wish we had somebody to report back to because sometimes it's a complaint that doesn't actually lead somewhere. Just recently, we got one about lighting at a commercial building in town. So I went and reviewed the building, I reviewed their site plan from 2012-ish, and everything was fine. I personally wonder if perhaps a bulb has been burned out for a long time that finally got replaced. But I had nobody to report this back to. So that's a tough spot because they may think we didn't follow up on it. So it is nice when we can follow up on it now and thank them for their input. So from the initial inquiry, it can go a variety of directions. With commercial properties, we really try to build a relationship with the property owner or the property manager so that when something comes up, it's not the first time from us, that we can send an email or a phone call, start with a more casual introduction than sending a certified letter right from the start, because that's what gets us off on the wrong. Sometimes that's the only choice we have. That is as far as the contact information provided to the town, unless they get provided that in a permanent process at some point, we default to the tax card, which is just their address. But always better when we can start with people. I would say signs are a never-ending process, you know, and just today, got a phone call on my way into work this morning alerting me that a repeat offender had been out overnight putting out a large amount of temporary signs. So thankfully, we have a good relationship with the property manager. By 8:30, we were able to let them know that we noticed the signs and that they needed to remove those. It's never ending as far as signs go. A lot of times the staffing changes, especially for larger retailers in town. So national retailers, they are sent out marketing materials. They are directed to put them out in all of their stores that exist in any community. And of course, we know all the communities have different regulations. So it's not particularly easy for them to follow along. Sometimes they get a little bit more difficult. There are times where the property owner or the tenant doesn't agree with our interpretation. Typically, they end up filing an appeal of administrative decision. So we went through one of those with a sign last spring, and that goes to the zoning board of adjustment. They hear the appeal of administrative decision, they review the zoning ordinance, and they side with either the administrator who made the decision or with the property owner applicant. So those are more difficult. Certainly, it puts the administrator, whoever it is that's made the decision, in the hot seat at those meetings. You have to lay out where you came to your conclusion and defend your position. And then there's this sort of path that most things go. That is compliance through education and walking them through a sometimes drawn out process of going through whatever approval process is necessary. Sometimes that's a trip to the zoning board for a variance or a special exception. Sometimes it requires a trip to the planning board. In the last year, I would say at least 4 of our larger planning board cases have been the result of enforcement because something has changed on a site plan or their business model evolved, their use isn't quite the same. So it ends up taking a long time. One of the components to that, especially for commercial site plans when there's compliance issues, is the hiring of consultants. So So if anybody's tried to hire a contractor or an engineer in the last 2 years, you know you were hitting on the bottom of a very long list. So in one particular scenario, we waited for almost 9 months to get the engineer who's involved in the original application and had all of the data to have the availability to start the work process, which then itself takes quite some time. So it can be a very long process. As long as the property owner or the business owner is making reasonable progress and showing good faith that they are working towards resolution, we typically don't escalate at that point. Escalation from there would be going to work. Of course, that's costly and as far as the fines go, we have $100 after the fact fee for any permit, whether it's a $25 driveway permit, whether it's a building permit, it's the $100 additional. The law does allow you to get up to $275 a day, but those are fines that have to be determined by a court actually. So that's a higher threshold, and hopefully we don't get to that point. I will say the other typical issues that are tough are sort of junk that can be in people's yards. Some of the junk, particularly if it has been titled at some point, if it is abandoned, you can't get most salvage yards to take it because they need the person to actually sign off on the whoever it was titled. So in one scenario, we worked with the police department to go through abandonment of the vehicle. So eventually it could be moved from the lot. But again, those take a long time. We had a scenario in town that was a formerly developed lot that had become vacant that was left with a fair amount of debris. And neighbors were upset, it was unsightly, also just sort of concerning. Looking out at the debris or trying to salvage things from it. And ultimately they did come into compliance, but it took quite a while working properly. Eventually they sold the property. It's some challenges getting rid of things that were left behind or occupied. You'd think driveways sound fairly benign, but they probably account for our largest amount of enforcement work in a year. Unfortunately, sometimes paving contractors mislead potential property owners about what is required for paving. So oftentimes what happens is that they paved a driveway, they have things that's left that they need to use before it goes bad. And so they knock on a door and say, hey, I'll give you a discount on paving the driveway. And it's just great, it's far less than what I thought it would be to pave it. And then they find out that they really need their driveway permit out. And their driveway permit is required so that Public Works Department and not the fire chief can make sure that the driveway is compliant, that Bob hasn't been dealing with the stormwater runoff issue for the last decade, and he's been waiting for them to finally pave that driveway so that we can fix the swale at the end of the driveway so that it actually hits the catch basin. And now they do that without having that dialogue so that they can correct the issue for some time. So, it's education of the contractor and then also of the property owners, because I think, these are reputable companies and they do great work. And so the customers sometimes do something else. So try to really use this education. So anyone here who needs to repave the driveway, just give us a call and we'll get that through.
I did.
I wasn't pointing anything.
That was me.
The other thing that is an interesting component to enforcement that I don't think you would necessarily think on the surface is that sometimes the people who are struggling with complying have other things in their life that are weighing on the fact some instability, and so it can be a delicate dance sometimes to not to incite somebody who is needing to come into compliance may not understand exactly what the ordinance is, that they are outside of compliance, or doesn't believe in ordinances, and just has a general distrust for they need to comply. And so those are difficult situations. Try occasionally we need to have the help of the police department. So Row will sometimes go with me to deliver some correspondence. I would say they're rare, but it definitely is a concern. And typically, if we are down the road in a compliance issue, and we realize that it's going to be difficult, we don't go out by ourselves. So Kim always likes a field trip to accompany me to just to for safety, and just so that if it does end up in court, we have.
So does anybody in the audience have any questions for Adam about what he's up to here? This is a little known part of his job, and I think I speak for all three of us when I say, I read here, it says it shall be the duty of the Board of Selectmen, and the board is hereby given power and authority to enforce the provisions of this ordinance. Then goes on to let us delegate that to Adam and to Kim. So I, at least, my time on the board, would really appreciate this part of what you do, because I can't imagine actually doing that myself.
I will say the great part is that 99% of inquiries are very easy. People just simply don't realize that there's regulation or there's no ill intent what is happening. Of the 50% of my job as zoning administrator, and 35% of that is the enforcement work of the zoning administrator, I will say 30% will be taken up by 1 or 2 different cases a year. And the rest you're doing 40 times the amount of individual cases, but there needs to be, oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe you have any questions for Adam?
No, but I was gonna say, it might be worth showing something in the next municipal matters about that driveway, because I know it's about that time of year when those contractors start showing up.
It is. As of 2 weeks ago, we started the roll-in of driveway permits, and we did hit the discriminants one last year, so we should.
Yeah.
It was
in April.
It was in April.
Yeah.
Jen, do you?
No, I don't.
Has Adam ever made you go out and help him with one of these things? You've been on the board the longest.
We've had road trips.
Yeah.
No one shot at us, so I think we're doing okay.
Well, thank you, Adam, and good luck with the housing commission tonight.
Thank you.
I bet you're gonna have some followers.
Yeah, it should be an interesting meeting.
It's gonna be a challenge to see if it's working.
Consultant is going to go over the database, so should be interesting.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda, the period of time for public comments or anything that's not currently on our agenda. So I will begin with John Ellis, who's already let us know that he has something he wants to do, introduce, talk about. John?
Thank you. Yeah, and about 6 months ago, we're hoping it was. There we are now. About 6 months ago, we took it upon ourselves, some of us, to involve Colby Sawyer students so they could be more involved with what we do in the town. And one of those objectives was with the Waste Management Committee and Waste Reduction. And so most recently, Dryden will introduce, wants to make a couple of comments on a different subject we'll bring up. He and I were involved with attending and educating the 5th grade class of the Kearsarge Elementary School. With the help of the transfer station and Kenny Waldo, who works with Bob, educating the 5th grade students. So we have 10 students out there at the transfer station to educate them on plastics and separation, etc. And then we went into the Kearsarge Elementary School and we gave a program for 60 of the 5th graders, and that will probably continue. Based on the success of that, we've been asked if we could continue that into other grades. And so with Jerry and I and Maureen Kroll and Joy Cubitt, we will continue that Fortunately, Dryden will be with us another year. But the reason I wanted to introduce you to Dryden, he's been active not only in that, but the Selectmen, and you may have heard of his name or seen him last week at the Pleasant Lake Community-based project where we're looking at some of the contaminants, phosphorus and chlorine, et cetera, into Pleasant Lake. He gave a great presentation along with 10 other graduates or undergraduates, which will continue under the leadership of Dr. Baer, and that'll continue again next year. So I asked them if you would take a few minutes just to share some of the observations that his committee had. They put in, this was a 2-semester long project to conclude this. They're finishing up their final report, and when that's done, we'd like to come back and take 3 or 4 minutes to tell you what we should be aware of in the town. So I'll let Brian know if you, Ellison, tell us a little bit about your comments.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, I'm a junior environmental studies student at Kearsarge College.
Dryden, just for the recording, would you introduce yourself totally with your full name and so on?
Okay. Yeah, my name is Dryden Eliason. I'm a junior environmental studies student at Kearsarge College. And me and 10 other of my peers, environmental studies and science students, conducted a year-long water quality assessment of Pleasant Lake. So to figure out where the nutrients was coming from of the phosphorus because of the recent cyanobacteria blooms, we sampled all the tributaries of Pleasant Lake on base flow days and on storm event days to see the influx of the nutrients when the rains were hard. And so we found a bunch of findings about what the chloride levels of like salt applications in the watershed are doing to the water quality, and then also where the phosphorus nutrients is coming from. And so we found that storm events are causing a high influx of nutrients into the lake. And so that also is an issue because those storm events are causing an influx of erosion. And with the application of sand in the winter, it would be interesting for Pleasant Lake to maybe look into centerpiece spoilers to collect the sand that comes off into the lake, maybe on Bunker Road where there's no barrier into the lake. And we also found that phosphorus binds to sediment, so that is also gives us a incentive to collect that sediment before it gets into the lake. But we did find that the town is pretty good at with salt reduction on the roads in Pleasant Lake. They only salt on the sharp turns. They do a pretty good job on Pleasant Street and Lakeshore Drive with salt reduction. But the main salt applications that we found were on the state roads. I think that's Route 11 and Route 14. 114. Yeah. And so there's still a lot of salt being applied on those, almost 17 times the amount. They apply like 17 tons a year on those state roads. And so on that road, it just, you don't think that it's in the watershed, but it enters in right near the Flower Pond. Well, a little bit to the left of that. But towns like Deerfield do have done salt reduction for their lakes and ponds on state highways. So that could also be something we could look into to maintain water quality in Pleasant Lake. Pleasant Lake's water quality is pretty good, but a deep glacial, oligotrophic lake like Pleasant Lake shouldn't be experiencing cyanobacteria blooms. And so as long as we maintain certain things like, we're also looking at septic tank maintenance, because if old leaky septics cause nutrients to enter the lake. And so if we continue education outreach for septic tank maintenance, that can also be a good thing in the future. But luckily we did find that septic tanks didn't really have a correlation with the amount of nutrients that was going into the lake, but it could be something that could be an issue in the future, but yeah, those were our findings of how to maintain Pleasant Lake's water quality.
Right, thank you, because I followed you several times with the Waste Reduction Committee and so on, so I appreciate your coming out tonight. And John, thank you for your continued work, both with Colby Sawyer students and with now the elementary school. It's great, thanks.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you both. Yep. Anybody else have an item that they want to comment on that's not on our agenda this evening? Joe, I'm looking around. I can't see your arm. Joe, your hand's not up, is it, Joe?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. You're resting on it? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is an update on the police facilities project. Kim?
Well, we'll have more of an update at the next meeting because the first meeting of the committee, the Police Facilities Advisory Committee, will be held on Friday, 10 a.m. in the police training room. So after that, I expect to hear more about what's going on.
So we will have an update at all of our meetings, obviously, because of this important subject. And the meeting, the first meeting is Friday?
Friday at 10 a.m.
Friday at 10 a.m. in the police training room.
Right.
Good. Okay, next item is abatement recommendations. As you all see, we have 2 abatements that have been recommended be granted and 4 denied. And then we want to have a separate discussion, I think, about the Sullivan Lodge. So do either one of you have questions about any of the 6 recommendations from the assessors regarding both the ones to be granted, Pratt and Hill, and the denied Hayes, Whittemer, West Wind Trust, and Fort Erie?
No.
No.
Not, I will entertain a motion to accept the recommendations of the assessors for these 6 abatement requests.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now the next item is the Masonic Association of King Solomon's Lodge, and I see you're here, Howard. Do you want to speak, or is Ben maybe here for the same purpose? You, just for background for the people sitting behind you and for the video, this issue has come up annually that the Masonic Lodge has requested an abatement, and each year the assessors have had to deny the request because of concerns with state law and the lack of standing of the Masonic Lodge under the terms of organizations that can have abatements. The lodge continues to be, I think, creative and suggesting to us the need for some help in some fashion. So rather than simply voting on the abatement tonight, we have a discussion about how we might deal with this issue more creatively. So Howard, with that background.
I have to correct what you said.
Okay, please do.
Sure, it's smaller. Can I make this come down?
You told it down.
Oh, there we go. It's a little better. This is the first time we've had the abatement question come before the board in this fashion. Previously, we had gone through many years of not paying taxes. Thank you very much, prior select people. With changes at the state level, kind of whatever the reasoning was, the changes at the state level, the assessor had to take a closer look at properties in New London, like King Solomon's Lodge, and to determine whether or not we qualified under the state statutes to be tax exempt. So the decision was that we're not tax exempt. That's a little bit different than applying for an abatement, because the process, now we're not tax exempt, we're paying taxes. We can apply for an abatement. We failed to do that in a timely manner last year. We managed to do it this year in a timely manner. And here we are. So, that's what we're hoping that you will consider, an alternative decision, to denying the abatement. You know, just so it doesn't come up later, King Solomon's Lodge has two, funds. One is a scholarship fund. The donor required that we not spend any of the money if it goes below $100,000, which it did for a period of time. So when it's over $100,000, we can budget that money for scholarships, particularly, specifically, only for scholarships. We have another fund that a former member, who's now deceased, raised money for, we call it the Centennial Fund. And that is to be used strictly for capital improvements or maintenance, really. Presently, we're spending a significant amount of that money to install a up-to-code fire escape to the second floor. And we'll be installing a second egress from the building. We learned that we can't have the second egress be through the kitchen. And that's the kind of thing that fund is set up for. And other than that, we don't have the financial strength in our membership to raise the money for taxes. So we can't really spend money out of either of those funds, because it's not keeping it with the intention of the donors. And that may not have been clear before, but I also didn't want you to find out 6 months from now that, oh, you've got $150,000 or something like that. I wanted to just explain what those funds are there for. We're very careful not to spend those monies on things that they shouldn't be spent on. So if we're going to have a discussion, perhaps you can contribute something to that before making a decision.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Sure, please.
Howard, you just said at the beginning that previously the lodge didn't have to pay property taxes. I didn't know this part.
Well-
Can you explain?
That saying we didn't have to pay taxes,
Or your.
there are a lot of people in the state that would disagree with that notion. And so you get into terminology which I'm not qualified to use properly. All I can say is we weren't asked to pay taxes. To the best of my recollection, I don't think the selectmen formally met to say, no, King Solomon's Lodge doesn't have to pay taxes. We just never were asked to pay taxes.
You're very close. I mean, that's. Here we go.
So for the purpose of the recording, we have Howard Hoke and Ben Barton here speaking. They weren't going to do that. I didn't introduce them. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Bill. And, good afternoon. So the process, because I've been the treasurer and now currently the secretary of Consultant, I can speak to this issue a little more clearly. So every year, the town would send us forms that would identify what our activities have been and what we would complete every year for the purposes of the tax exempt status. That was a formal process. And my knowledge, it was done every year, way back before my time of being secretary and treasurer. That was the process. Had to be filed by a certain date, and was considered. We never heard anything from that, as the laws permitted. Now the laws have changed, so. But that was a process.
Janet?
Yeah, I do. So in the information we received from our assessor, she said that you have not filed an annual report with the Attorney General's Charitable Trust Division. Is there a reason why you've done that?
I think she's mistaken.
Okay, so have you filed reports with the IRS as well?
In our original discussion, perhaps 2 years ago now, we were in arrears. Since then, we have brought everything up to date and are no longer in arrears. I don't have personal knowledge. Well, Ben does, so.
So I was treasurer 16 to 2021. And the end, I want to remember it is ND 990, something like that, for nonprofits. We filed that one over the period of time that I was certainly filed it, and before that, I remember the trail. But I can't remember who was in charge of that prior to that period.
So with regard to charitable events, what do you do with the money that you get from your dinners and that sort of thing? I mean, isn't that considered offering something back to the community? What happens with that?
We put a lot of that information in the abatement request.
Okay, well, we don't have all of that.
Okay, so I don't have it in front of me.
Can I
but-
jump in, Bill, at some point?
Let's back up just a step and let me make sure that for the audience, at least for the recording, that tell you what we have from the assessor at this point, okay? She says that the organization, your organization is not arguing the assessed value. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, because some people, when they ask for abatements, they argue about the assessed value, nor the taxable status of the property you own. We went through that last year, and that's the issue that Janet is raising now in the statute of state statute, chapter 418 says that real estate is taxable for fraternal organizations. Instead, you're asking us to grant an abatement for good cause shown. She said, that your understanding?
I would believe so. The cause is we can't raise the money.
Right. So RSA 7616, just for the record, provides that an abatement may be granted for good cause shown. Good cause generally means either establishing an assessment is disproportionate to market value in the municipality's level of assessment. You're not challenging that. Or establishing poverty or inability to pay the tax. This form can be utilized, government form now, for either basis of requesting an abatement. You have the burden of proof to show good cause for an abatement. That's what you're now doing here today, is showing us that good cause, given that your finances being what they are, that you can't trust, touch those two funds, and your operations aren't sufficient to cover what is the tax bill, something over $4,000 a year, 6,000, two properties, $6,000 a year, and that you don't. The good cause is you don't have those funds available to you. Is that correct?
We have it for the current moment in time, but once we get through 2 more payments, we won't have any money. Should we not be given some sort of relief?
So you have sufficient funds at this point to pay taxes for the current bill and for the next one, is what you're saying.
My understanding is that that's true.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we understand what it is that's being questioned here.
I think
It's not the assessment, and it's not the fact that it's been denied because of the state regulations statute.
No. My thought process, which is not always consistent with the rules and regulations, was that we go through this process and we can, because you apply for abatements to the Board of Selectmen, I only learned recently, I think the end of March, that the Board of Selectmen typically just approve recommendations of the assessor, which means filing for an abatement in our circumstances is a waste of time. So, that's why I said at the previous meeting that I would ask that the selectmen consider an alternative to just accepting the recommendation of the assessor. So I'm hoping that we can find an amicable solution, that the lodge is not unwilling to pay something. We've talked amongst ourselves and considered that, we've talked with other Masonic lodges and what their views are. And it seems a reasonable thing to suggest that we pay town portion of the tax. And I don't know whether that would be satisfactory for all the parties. It would probably be satisfactory for King Solomon's Lodge.
Okay, I want to stop you there because I interrupted Kim, but I just wanted to get on the table what the actual report from the assessor was of the other 6 cases. Now, you heard it very quickly. There were 2 that we agreed to and 4 that 6 we agreed to and 2 where the abatement was permitted and 4 where it was denied. So Kim, what you were going to say?
I was going to clarify the issue of the charitable. The charitable issue is off the table, which Bill, you clarified.
Yeah.
But this is an abatement. The only way the selectmen can do what the Masonic Lodge wants is through an abatement process. Chris McAllister deals with issues of tax levy, the proportionality, the value of the property, which Bill pointed out, you don't have an issue with that. So what the selectmen now have to decide is whether poverty, your inability to pay, rises to the level of an abatement. Abatements, to be fair to all taxpayers, selectmen have to obviously look very carefully at all applications for abatement. From what I'm hearing tonight, you do have the ability to pay 2023 taxes. So I would suggest that this request for 2023 taxes, you've just said you could pay, should be denied because you do have the ability to pay, right? For this one.
I am very confused.
Okay.
When we're in 2024 and you're talking about 2023 taxes.
Right. So that's.
We're sorry to interrupt, but what we're hoping for is an ability to extend what little cash we do have to cover more periods of time. If we have to pay full amount of the 2023 taxes, then we are going to diminish that resource very, very quickly. We may not be able to organize ourselves adequately to have the funds available to pay even a reduced future.
Yeah, I get that. So we are talking about 2023 taxes and the law is clear that it is an inability to pay. And again, I understand you want to stretch out your money, but given that you can pay 2023 taxes, I understand your bank account will be low and you'll have difficulties. I can't see how the selectmen could grant an abatement for inability to pay when you can pay. That would be part of it. The second thing would be if the courts would look closely at this case, if you were to appeal it, or if another taxpayer was upset about the abatement, about your inability. What other things have you tried to do? The one case that Chris, the assessor, found about inability to pay was about a person who had a house. It was a residential property, and the courts remanded it back to the lower court to say, you need to look closer. What are the finances? What other options did the taxpayer have to meet their obligations? And so I'm not sure that selectmen have that kind of information now to make those kinds of decisions. But, just to be clear, Howard, this is an abatement. It would mean that the town would you would get a tax bill and the town would abate some or all of it. Unlike the charitable exemption that you got in prior years, many years probably, and as Ben pointed out, you filled an application out saying that you were a charitable organization. I think around the state, there was a misunderstanding of state law with regard to Masonic lodges, and it became known to the assessors that Masonic lodges are in fact not charitable for purposes of the law. Certainly do good things, but for purposes of the law, you were not charitable. A bill was introduced in this legislature, 2024, to try and make the law go along with saying Masonic lodges are tax exempt. It didn't go anywhere. It may come back next year and you won't even have this issue. You'll file that form that you used to file and it will be, you'll be back to what it was before. Now we have the situation where you're taxable property. Exemptions for poverty or inability to pay are difficult. I mean, they're hard to get, and there's a lot of information that the selectmen would need to prove that you can't pay. And then sometimes businesses, clubs, organizations can't pay their taxes. That does happen. And whether or not they can get an abatement for inability to pay, I've not heard of it. I couldn't find any to use for guidance for the selectmen. Or maybe you guys have, or maybe other towns with Masonic lodges have done similar things. I think, did you mention, Howard, that some towns had given partial abatements?
No, I thought that perhaps asking for a total abatement would be suspect at higher levels of government attention. And I was thinking that perhaps, again, we were talking amongst ourselves and talking to other lodges that, what would you think would be a good situation? Several members of other lodges that have visited our lodge have agreed that paying the town portion of the tax is absolutely appropriate. And that made the light bulb go off in my head to say, all right, don't grant us a full abatement like we're tax exempt. I don't want to confuse the Attorney General's office. I thought maybe we could find a way to have it be a portion. And that way we're not tax exempt.
I don't,
We're getting the relief that we need.
I wouldn't say tax exempt. The only way you're gonna be tax exempt is if that bill passes. You're fully taxable and the selectmen would be abating. In other words, forgiving, abating, allowing you not to pay your entire liability.
I'm getting tired.
So let me
Details.
go down a different road here, Howard, if I may.
Well, before, I just made a note here that a large percentage of the funds that we have available are funds that we've raised from the public for the purposes of charitable work. Charitable work is, as an example, the community Thanksgiving dinner that we serve annually. At least maintaining our parking lot so that it can be used for public parking. I can't think of, we have given donations to, done community builders awards, but we're kind of shorthanded in the regular attendance field and have not been able to put together the evening events that would allow us to continue that, but we make donations to local charitable groups and some that are a little bit further away as the requests come through. We have tried very hard when we raise money from the public to make sure those funds aren't used for our own purposes. That's why we have the Centennial Fund, so we can we contribute to that ourselves, so we can maintain the building for the benefit of the community to use it as they might need. We use, of course, we benefit by having the building too, but we don't charge any rent for any organization like the Lions Club meets there twice a month now. And we don't charge any rent for anybody that wants to use the building for a reception or a funeral service or anything like that, or any other purpose. We didn't charge the town of London when they were using it as a place for charrettes several years ago about issues pertaining particularly to elephants. Those are it's hard to put a value on that.
What I want to suggest is we're not going to make a lot of progress arguing about or discussing the law and definitions of charitable and so on. What I want to suggest is, since you have indicated that you have funds available to pay the current tax bill, that you do that and stay in good stead. And there's another provision here that I didn't quite get to before we went off the other side, which is you can also have other relief in addition to abatement. And one of those is some alternative public assistance. It seems to me that one of the things that the lodge does is provides public assistance for the town in terms of what you allow the voters on Pleasant Lake to do with their trailers. And there may be something that we can look at in that regard that would make more sense than trying to see if we can slice the salami between the IRS and the state statutes here and so on. So what I'd like to suggest is that the lodge honor the tax bill they currently have from the town, and that we have a couple of us spend some time with you thinking about something that we might be able to do to, you raise this informally with some of us to provide some recompense for what you do for the town, what you do for all the other people you mentioned. Between you and them, we can't really take that into consideration. We have to take into consideration what you do for the town. And it seems to be providing that facility for boatsmen is a prime example of where there might be some ground to be covered. I don't know whether how Jan and Phoebe feel about that, but I don't think we're in a good spot talking about abatement for financial reasons alone. Really the bad seat of the two you feel.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there is further conversation that we can have about this. Definitely, but I agree with everything Bill just said. I'm sorry that you guys are having to go through this. I really am. And I'd really like to help you come up with a solution to it. And I would suggest that we monitor somehow this summer the use of your parking lot, how much it is being used. But maybe we can talk to Putnam about that, so that we can get a good idea of how much is being used. I think it's worth it.
So my only question is about timing, because you mentioned the year 2023 and versus 24. What's the right timing for us to approach you on this discussion? So that-
Now, as you
I
are,
think we've done that, so.
yes, but I think, at least my personal conclusion, listening to this and reviewing the record, is that you need to pay the tax bill that you have. And now is the time. Probably anything that we might be able to come up with would be something we need to present to the town meeting. The selectmen are limited in terms of arrangements that they can make that have a financial impact. And so we would have to ask the town meeting for approval to do something. And so now is a great time to start that process for next March, not 2 weeks before town meeting. Well,
I'm not 100%, because I don't have all the information here, but I believe you have paid March taxes. So, which is the most current bill. There will be a new one coming out in May, which will be the first two of tax year 24. And those are obviously on the I believe they're current.
2023 is paid.
Tax year 23 that just ended.
or that's
These-
funny calendar, tax collector. But I think that, on what I just said, they should continue to pay their taxes when they come due and
Right, yeah.
not be in default, yeah. Jen, you got to say something.
I'll go ahead, Howard, and then I'll say what I say.
This is where I'm constantly confused. I have no idea what tax year is coming next. And I thought there was a bill that was due before the end of June.
You are not alone, Howard.
I-
It's very confusing to everybody as to what year we're in for setting the tax rate, paying taxes, collecting taxes, and so on. But
So at this
Will would be happy to give us an education.
No,
I can blow your mind and whatever you'd like.
My brain, I'm running out of time for this for myself. So if the tax bill was paid in March, if that's the last bill for 2023, my perception was that, if an abatement were granted, that maybe technically we'd get some money back or something like that. Is that how that works?
He's nodding his head, yes.
Yeah, it would, yeah.
Then that would make it possible to pay the next bill. Because I'm not 100% sure that we actually have enough money to pay the next bill. I'm not the treasurer, and treasurer's not here right now. But that's speculative.
The next
right?
bill,
Right at
the next
moment,
bill is
okay.
probably $1,500. Then says you have a $6,000 assessment.
Okay.
Because we bill quarterly.
So I'm gonna be quiet now.
Okay.
My brain is about broken.
Well, in the discussion of using the parking lot, which is being used, publicly, I think we do need to monitor who is using it. I mean, are the people who park their boat trailers there, non-residents of New London? And I think we need to know that before, we start paying for, the use of it.
So one thing about that, my understanding is about boat ramps, is that the community in which the boat ramp exists needs to be providing the parking for the boat ramp, whether they're residents of London or not.
That's correct. I just was looking at that before.
They could come up from
I've never seen it.
Massachusetts for the day and be parking their boat trailer there, and that's accessing the boat ramp.
Well, we're not sure about that, Howard, because I know the state has a lot of boat ramps that don't provide parking, so I think we need to, check into that. I mean, if that is the case, then certainly, we do have an obligation, but we need to find that out first.
So I was gonna wait, but I'll assume I know what your decision is gonna be tonight. With a denial of the abatement request, I'm done on the subject, just so you know. I won't be coming back for this topic or any subsequent topic because I don't have time. I've exhausted all of the time I have in my personal life for this topic. And I appreciate the time you've given to it very much.
Ben, you know.
But we won't give up.
So I guess, I need to have a motion to deny the abatement request of the King Solomon Lodge for the current tax bill from 2023 taxes. Do that first.
Can we postpone?
You don't have to make the decision
Don't
tonight
have
if you
to
don't
make
want. Nope.
Yeah, I'd like some more time.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
postpone this and, have,
No, I did
Further
not get- I did
conversation.
not get a motion.
no motion.
Okay, and then the second thing I was gonna say, I think we do need to have some more discussion about some of the non-legal opportunities, and I think you've started down the right road, which is who's using it, how many are using it, and, you know, what latitude does the town have, because the alternative is I envision it might be what we see around Little Lake Sunapee, which is boat trailers pulled along the side of the road, creating, I don't know, still an enforcement issue.
Right.
Okay, so, the board has not made any motion for the evening, and we're gonna continue to have our
You have to
discussion.
come back.
Well, if it involves a discussion of some sort of an arrangement, it'll be another person leading that charge, but I wanted to ask a question, because checking out who's using the parking lot is a very valid and very important question. I'm not sure that any member of the lodge is able to do that on a reliable, regular basis. And I was just wondering if it would be convenient and possible, perhaps for the police to be aware, you know, as they're driving around, that they might be able to jot down license plate numbers or something like that, so you know where, or state. You get where I'm going with
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
And I just, because they're out and about a lot, perhaps there could be some assistance in keeping, getting some numbers, together, so. I'm not looking for, a commitment. Throw the idea out.
Okay, no, it's a good idea.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we hope you won't not come back.
I will, but I'm not gonna be. I will probably come back, but I'm not going to be the leader of the next step.
Okay,
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. Thank you both.
thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, which hopefully will not take place much time, is the approval of capital reserve fund expenditures. Lynn?
Lynn Lewis, Finance. So I sent you a memo and it's, basically there have been 3 expenditures recently that were discussed as potentially coming from capital reserve funds. So I'm requesting that the board approve those expenditures. The first one is for, Beltronics. It's for $21,609.70. And it was for an upgrade to the dispatch equipment that was no longer being supported by the manufacturer. This would come from the communications equipment capital reserve, and it would leave a balance of $230,000 in that account. The next one is from BC3. It was for a new sonic firewall and wireless access points at the Academy building. It's some of the work that Mike Williams had earmarked to come from the capital reserve. That would be the computer maintenance and replacement. That total was, I said, $4,395, and it leaves $74,163 in that capital reserve. And then the last is Walco Mechanical. This is mini split AC system at the firehouse, and it was discussed during budget prep for fiscal year 2024, but was not put in the operating budget. It was determined it would best come out of the capital reserve. So that total was $13,915, and that leaves a balance in that account from the town building and maintenance fund, $86,918.
Any discussion, Janet?
No.
Dee?
Yeah, just a quick question, Lynn. Can you explain again the Beltronics upgrade to the dispatch equipment that was no longer supported by the manufacturer?
Right, this has to do with the changeover in the dispatch.
Yeah.
So it's part of that changeover. Beltronics provided support.
Oh, Beltronics, is that, okay, I got
Yeah,
it.
that's our
Yep,
dispatch
yep.
equipment company.
Yep, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, anything you have to add? Okay, anybody in the audience? Entertain a motion to approve the 3 proposed expenditures from capital reserve funds as outlined by Lynn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kim, it's your turn.
Okay, hopefully everybody saw the Intertown Record article saying that we are looking for volunteers. So I'm hoping that we get more volunteers for our various committees. We have 3 new volunteer interest forms that the selectmen will be thinking about. And I think at the next meeting, we can do some additional appointments. I'd like to give it a little bit more time to see if that article drums up some support. Hopefully it will. The start of the Main Street project will be May 13th. I got an email today from the water precinct. There was a pre-construction meeting last week with the police and fire and public works and recreation. I was there. So there's a lot of talk among the main people involved, and we're hoping for a very successful project. We're particularly going to be watching people who avoid Main Street and go down Parkside and Squires and Everett Park. So those of you local people, please, if you're going to avoid Main Street, don't go speeding through those residential areas. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that traffic keeps moving on Main Street. We won't divert any traffic on Main Street. It'll go down to 1 lane and there'll just be flaggers and police officers. So people will have to wait a little bit until their turn to go, but please be patient and try not to cut through the neighborhoods if at all possible. Finally, hopefully, people probably have heard about Sue Stubner, who has announced her intent to leave New London and go to Ohio, Marietta College. And I just want to say the 8 years that I've worked with Sue, she's been an amazing partner in the town to work with. through COVID, and, you know, she's done so many amazing things from the college. It's a real loss for us. Marietta College is really getting a great president, so I want to wish her well, and hopefully we get a person to replace her just as good. That would be awesome. But that's all I have.
Committee reports, Dee Dee?
No, I'll have two the next time. Janet's gonna talk about our, yeah.
Okay, Janet?
With regard to the sewer meeting, somebody noted that the state is saying that they need a backup operator, and they're having trouble with that because the person that they have second in command doesn't have enough hours, to be issued a license. The best note of the evening was that our sewer usage is down, and the quote was exceptionally low. So Melinda was very happy to hear that, although I don't think some is. And, they said that they need a Stearns camera, so that may be something that they look forward to putting in their budget. And the last thing was, we did approve $17,150 for a liner for a new dumpster. And
Or
that,
a new dumpster altogether.
yeah, oh, was
Yeah.
it
A new dumpster
sure, okay. And
with a
they'll have it-
line.
We'll have a liner, okay. So anyway, they do need that for sludge, and it has to be, they have to be able to get in and dump it easily, so
Anything else? Okay. And some of you, I saw your faces on Saturday at the styrofoam collection session on Saturday morning. The Waste Reduction Committee again got similar quantities of styrofoam, which will go to Guilford and be made compacted, sent to Canada for installation in the construction industry. It's fantastic to see the amount of styrofoam that we can create in 3 or 4 months in this town. Some combination of simple things like little trays at the grocery store to the amazing amount of styrofoam that some manufacturers put things in. The number one thing that surprised me is the number of small little coolers for medicine, which must be a sign of the demographics of the town. But we had a very large number of those medical coolers that showed up and posed some of the questions. And we had one resident come and take away some of the bigger coolers because she was working on feeding people who need food and leave it at their doors. They needed the coolers for recycled coolers for that, so we had double recycling. So continued to do good work. Dryden was not there, but a couple of his other friends from Colby Sawyer were, so that's really working out. Okay, minute meetings, April 18th. I hear a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, and we can see a long list of upcoming meetings here. Note that we will not actually meet again for 3 weeks. We stretch out July a bit, which had more Wednesdays than the normal month does. Other than that, I'm not going to read them all off here. Other business, at some point, we need to decide what we want to do to recognize Bob Harrington's retirement. We'll talk about that tonight, or maybe on the 22nd when we meet again. You might think about that. I'll give Kim any suggestions that you might have. So on, I think 35 years, we should do more than just a handshake.
Agreed.
And I gave you as a prep for tonight's meeting some suggestions about things we might do at the June 27th forum. And again, I think chew those over, and 22nd perhaps we'll get a little more specific about what we want to do and so on. So, unless anybody wants to talk about it tonight.
I think it looks fine. I would just ask that septic, maybe not necessarily be a quickie. Only because if we have the conversation, and as Brian was talking about the report that just came from Colby, if we get feedback that people are interested in moving this forward, I would think it would be a warrant article and that we would need to have more conversations about it. So that's it. Other than that, I think off the top.
As he mentioned it tonight, I was at the same
Yeah,
reaction,
yeah.
so. it's good. And, we may have more on water than too, because of what's going on in Main Street.
Right.
So, but that's just to get us all thinking along.
Yeah.
The same lines. Okay, I'd like to, a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, 2E to deal with litigation.
Getter, yes.
Casey, yes.
Yes. We will come back out of, non-public session to sign vouchers and so on, and we will not conduct any other business this evening, other than the vouchers. Thank you all for coming.